So for those of you who don't know, I'm Ashley Click. I'm the Director of Social Justice at Holy Trinity. And I am pleased today to have Emma Tacky from our, is it TAC or Tacky? Sorry, I should have asked you before we started.
Tacky.
Tacky.
No worries, Tacky.
From Catholic Mobilizing Network to talk to us about the resumption of federal executions. And I'm sure we'll talk about the Pope's new encyclical too. So Emma, I will pass it on to you. As in the past, guys, we will do the chat, questions in the chat, and we'll moderate it that way. And I think that is it. So we're just glad that you joined us today. And are you ready to start the screen, share screen?
Yes, that would be great. Thank you. Okay. Well, great. Thank you, Ashley, so much. And thank you, everyone, for letting Catholic Mobilizing Network be a part of this week's CommuniTea meeting, which I love the name. It makes me laugh every time I see it on my calendar. I think that is so clever. I just wanted to say that I know we have Dennis Reeder with us today, who is a board member of Catholic Mobilizing Network. So I don't know if folks were aware, but Dennis, it was nice to see your name pop up. So like Ashley said, my name is Emma Tacky, and I am here to provide some context around the current status of the death penalty regarding what's going on with federal executions and kind of what we anticipate moving forward and action opportunities we can all take to deepen our understanding when it comes to learning how our Catholic faith calls us to honor the dignity of all human life. Ashley, you can go ahead and slide. Thank you. And I think, I may be wrong, but I think some of you have also been part of CMN's restorative justice intensives that we've held in DC in the past, which is so wonderful. And I know many of you are familiar with CMN, so I'm excited to have this time together to dig a little deeper into the death penalty side of CMN's mission. Okay, slide, Ashley, thank you. So Catholic Mobilizing Network, for those not familiar, is the national Catholic organization working to end the use of the death penalty and to promote restorative justice through education, advocacy, and prayer. Slide. And while we are based in Washington, DC, and that's where I'm located and where Jeff is and where we have our office, historically in its 10 years as an organization, we haven't focused on legislation on the federal level. And this is because the strategy for CMN and the broader movement to end the death penalty has been built around abolishing the practice of capital punishment on a state-by-state basis. However, due to the executions resuming on the federal level, unfortunately, our attention has shifted to incorporate how to stop the current administration from continuing its pursuit of carrying out death sentences. Slide, please. Thank you. So based on the gospel value that every human is created in the image and likeness of God, CMN expresses the fundamental belief that all those who have caused or been impacted by a crime should be treated with dignity. And we have the current catechism teaching up there on the screen for you, which I think is probably familiar to most of you. But we have, like Ashley mentioned, we have a really exciting development to share with you all. Slide. Just this past Sunday, on the feast day of St. Francis of Assisi, Pope Francis released his 6th papal encyclical entitled Fratelli Tutti on the topic of fraternity and social friendship. In the encyclical, Pope Francis reaffirms the inadmissibility of capital punishment in the eyes of the Catholic Church. So this is in line with and building on the developments with statements of past recent popes as well as with Pope Francis. So I just think this is such a beautiful quote that was shared. And if you haven't had a chance to take a look at the encyclical, I highly encourage you to do so. It's really just full of so many beautiful statements and reaffirms that we are called to value the dignity of all human life, regardless of life circumstances. So we, in the past 10 years, have seen tremendous advances in the death penalty abolition movement. You all may know that 22 states have officially abolished their death penalty. 7 of those states have ended the death penalty in the last 7 years. And Colorado was the most recent one in March 2020, which I can't think of anything else that happened in March this year that was significant, except maybe the pandemic and everything that followed that. Additionally, the governors of 4 other states have imposed moratoriums on executions in their states within the past 10 years. And those states were Colorado, which is now officially abolished, California, Oregon, and Pennsylvania. Slide, please. So 2/3 of states in the United States have moved away from the practice of capital punishment, meaning that the states may still officially have the death penalty on their books, but only a handful really continue to carry out executions. And so the trends we're seeing on a state level are really a sharp contrast to the recent actions of the federal government. We really do see the resumption of federal executions as wrongheaded and out of step with public opinion of the death penalty. Slide, please. So you can see here are some other relevant facts and figures of the current status of the death penalty nationwide. In July 2019, so last summer, the Department of Justice first announced its plans to resume federal executions after nearly 17 years. They scheduled 5 executions over the next several months. However, due to a barrage of legal challenges and back and forth, all of those executions were delayed, which brings us to this summer when on June 15th, the Department of Justice announced that in July, 3 men were scheduled for execution within a 5-day period, and then a 4th and 5th execution were scheduled for the end of August. Of course, this was deeply concerning. Slide, please. Because one of the reasons why the federal death penalty is wrong are the same reasons why the death penalty on a state level is wrong. It's riddled with errors and misconduct. Executions really stem from our country's history of racial violence, with direct links to our past of lynching Black Americans, which, if you want more information regarding that part, the Death Penalty Information Center released a couple of weeks ago this incredible 88-page report on how racism and the death penalty go hand in hand. And it's truly eye-opening and fascinating, and I'm happy to send that as a follow-up after we talk today. The death penalty is also geographically isolated and arbitrary, and just really out of step with the national trend of decreasing rates of executions and death sentences around the country. Slide, please. So since the mid-June announcement this summer, 7 men have been executed by the federal government, and you see their names there. And I think it's worth taking the time to name them because these executions were done in our name. So that was Daniel Lewis Lee, Wesley Ira Perkey, Dustin Lee Hunkin, Lesmond Mitchell, Keith Dwayne Nelson, William LaCroix, and Christopher Villalba, most recently on September 24th. All 7 of the men were killed by lethal injection. Daniel Lewis Lee and Wesley Ira Perkey were executed despite their death warrants expiring. Dustin Lee Hunkin suffered from schizophrenia, Alzheimer's disease, and dementia. Lesmond Mitchell was the first Native American to be executed by the federal government in the modern era of the death penalty. Christopher Villalba was the first African American man executed in this recent slew of executions. Slide, please. There is one more federal execution that has been scheduled for November. This is currently the only federal execution on the docket for right now, but these scheduled executions have kind of been coming randomly, so another one could be scheduled. We just are not sure. But that man is named Orlando Hall, and his execution is scheduled for November 19th, a week before Thanksgiving. And if you are motivated to take action against the upcoming execution of Orlando Hall, we have this action alert with a pre-written letter addressed to President Trump and Attorney General Barr, who Attorney General Barr is a Catholic, to stop the execution of Orlando Hall. Earlier this summer, we had a petition with more than 1,000 faith leaders that signed on from an array of religious traditions addressed to President Trump and AG Barr, urging them to halt federal executions. So I invite you all to send in this letter on behalf of Mr. Hall and share it with your communities as one way to raise awareness and opposition to the federal executions. Thank you. So before, I have a few other advocacy actions to share with you all, but I did want to share that there are a small handful of bills in Congress currently that we are keeping our eye on. Now these bills are still partisan, and we know based on our experience with state campaigns that working to end the death penalty that bipartisan support on abolition bills is really essential for them to be successful. So we will know more about what opportunities are really feasible after the elections in November. This is an ongoing conversation, so as we learn more about what's possible, we can keep you updated, and we will have updates on strategy on, shared in our email communications and on our website. And here are some other actions from CMN. We have our RJ conference, which is a totally virtual online event. This conference was actually supposed to take place earlier this summer in July in California at the University of San Diego. But in light of the pandemic, now it's been moved to this month and it's all virtual, which in many ways is beneficial because it allows opportunity for folks who may not have been able to go to California to be a part of this conference. So this conference allows, a deeper understanding and opportunities to learn more about the intersection of Catholic social teaching and restorative justice. So I encourage you all to register for that if you would like to. And then we have our Just Mercy study guide, which this might be a nice Respect Life Month activity or further on throughout the year. But I'm sure you all know the film based on the book of the same name, Just Mercy, which shares the true story of attorney Brian Stevenson and his client, Walter McMillan in Alabama, who was sentenced to death even though he was innocent. So it's the true story of that. And we have the study guide, which kind of walks you through the church teaching and how this film can kind of bring up other questions around, what do we think, what are we called to believe about the death penalty? And then next month on November 19th, we are holding an online vigil on Zoom for Orlando Hall. This is a way to join in community around prayer and kind of holding space to pray for Orlando Hall and his victim and their families and all who are impacted by executions. We've held a virtual vigil for every one of the federal executions, and we will continue to do so as long as they are needed. And I know some of you on today's call have been a part of these vigils, which I thank you so much for your time and prayers there. So we don't have a sign-up link yet for this prayer vigil on November 19th, but that is forthcoming, so stay tuned for that. And then before we dive into questions, I just wanted to put my contact information up there, emma.t@catholicsmobilizing.org. Please email me anytime you have a question or concern or an idea. I always love to hear from you. And then our social media and website as well is up there. And now I think we are ready for questions.
Thanks, Emma. That was terrific. Is CMN still working on the state-by-state strategy? What states are on the horizon to eliminate, and why are those bills you identified symbolic?
Yes, so I'll take the last part of the question first. We see these bills as symbolic, first because with the elections, kind of right on the cusp, we really just don't know what opportunities are going to be in Congress with these bills. So it's hard to kind of plan ahead when the elections are coming up. And these bills are still partisan. So until they're bipartisan, we really don't see but they have a kind of a lot of legs as of right now, but that could change, so stay tuned. And yes, CMN is still working on a state-by-state strategy. Some of the states we're looking at in terms of repeal opportunities include Ohio and Virginia. If any of you are Virginia residents and are interested in getting more involved with repeal opportunities in the state, please let me know. And then Wyoming as well, which is great. Then was there another part of that question that I missed?
No, I think that you covered that. And can you talk a little bit about what you're doing in the restorative justice space?
Sure, yes. And as a caveat, I am not the restorative justice expert. That role belongs to our Director of Restorative Justice, Caitlin Morneau. But I can say that we're hosting the Restorative Justice Conference at the end of the month, which is wonderful. We are hosting a webinar as well about restorative justice next week, which I believe that invitation is forthcoming as well. And really, there's been a lot of good work done in terms of holding restorative justice circle intensives, both online and in person when that was possible. Really to kind of, it's about educating people who identify as Catholic on what restorative justice is and how it can intersect with Catholic social teaching in a really wonderful way.
How do you see the Pope's encyclical impacting your efforts in the coming months?
Well, I think it can only impact us well. I think maybe that's naive of me, but I think it's just a wonderful affirmation of the catechism teaching and what past popes have said about the death penalty. And I just think it really just like underscores, like, yes, the death penalty is inadmissible and there's no need for it. So I think it's in a lot of ways just as kind of impactful as the 2018 catechism revision around the death penalty.
I just have a question. Did you get a response when you send out these signed statements to the current administration? I know I received a lot of email about the Catholic breakfast that happened last month.
Oh,
and so I had reached out to Jeff about it a little bit. So I'm just curious as to kind of are you having an exchange with the administration on this topic, and what is that exchange?
you know, we know they are in receipt of the petition. We sent it in, but there's no personal outreach to us in terms of the petition or the letters, but we did send them in. And I know, the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast got a lot of attention from people concerned that Attorney General Barr was Catholic, was receiving this award from the prayer breakfast that was supposed to kind of hold up people who've exemplified what it means to live out the Catholic faith, when we know that AG Barr has been like such an instigator in terms of restarting federal executions. So we did some work around that as well.
On that note, I have a question as to what was the AG's rationale for resuming executions? Can you give some background on that?
Sure. Well, that's a good question. When President Trump was running for president in 2015, 2016, 2015, one of his campaign promises was to resume federal executions. And so with, elections right around the corner, this year, the administration really wanted to make good on that promise as well, as they wanted to be seen as being tough on crime. So that's the main reason, I think, is making good on President Trump's promise to resume them.
Can you share a little bit about what drew you to work at CMN and how you were called to this kind of work?
Sure. Well, I was raised Catholic. I grew up in Boise, Idaho, and my dad was a theology teacher for 27 years. And my parents have always been really active in their parish and kind of living out, what it means to be a faithful Catholic in terms of, working in your community and really living out your faith by actions and kind of standing by your convictions. So I was raised with that mentality. I went to Catholic school almost my entire life. I went to a Benedictine college in Minnesota. And then from there, I did a year of the Jesuit Volunteer Corps in Northwest in Seattle, Washington, and then moved to DC, working for another Catholic organization called Network Lobby with Sister Simone Campbell, which was really an opportunity to kind of pair my beliefs and my faith with advocacy and kind of community organizing. So it was never, I never really questioned whether or not I thought the death penalty was good. I was always raised with, well, no, it's, it's a violation of our faith. We don't support the death penalty. So when the opportunity from CMN came along that they were hiring in my current position, I went for it because it just aligned so well with my personal beliefs and kind of what I wanted to work on professionally as well. Because there's so much within the criminal legal system that needs to be transformed, and the death penalty is like, right up there.
Jeff, since we have you, do you want to share how you got involved with CMN?
Sure, happy to.
Maybe introduce yourself. I know you because I get all your emails, but.
Hi, I'm Jeff. I handle CMN's development work, and we are grateful to be with you. We're grateful to Holy Trinity Parish for your generous support of us through your tithing grant. And I think in a way of explaining how I came to CMN, I'll offer an anecdotal story. I was a lay missioner with a Franciscan organization in Cochabamba, Bolivia for 4 years before joining CMN. And that was my first real experience with capital punishment, serving in a country where there wasn't the death penalty, or at least there wasn't the death penalty in a formal way. Some money would come into the prisons, and those that in theory should be executed were killed inside the prison. And that was often done in a pool. And I had this experience, working through the Archdiocese, I would often be the one tasked with taking new volunteers to the prisons for the first time. And I had a volunteer ask how luxurious life in the prisons was because they saw this pool. And in reality, that was the death chamber. That was how executions were carried out. And so I had to explain to this young college student about capital punishment in Bolivia without any context. She came from a country where there wasn't the death penalty. And so explaining executions in that context led me to question how I would explain that to someone visiting a US prison, walking past the death chamber and thinking, what is this chair here for? And having to start from ground zero with, this is what happens in that room. And so when I came back to the States, I really wanted to get involved with ending that practice here, helping us kind of join the rest of the quote unquote civilized or developed world in moving past that practice. Long-winded story, but hopefully a good example.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for letting me put you on the spot. Does anybody else have any more questions? Those are the ones I had in the chat. You can raise your hand or unmute if you have a question. You did such a comprehensive job, Emma. We've been, and with all of the emails you guys send, we put a lot about what you guys are doing in our social justice communications too. So maybe we could, oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, I feel like I'm probably preaching to the choir in a lot of ways in terms of information sharing and probably what you all already know, but.
I mean, do you think, I mean, some other opportunities, and they don't really have to do with federal executions, but we reach out, the Order of Malta has reached out to us about letter writing. Catholic Charities has a local program here that tries to partner mentors with, people who maybe have 1 year left in a sentence locally. Are there other things, I know this maybe is kind of out of your realm, but that you would encourage people to do beyond the ones you've highlighted today about petitioning if you live in Virginia? Or are there other things that within this, kind of the prison ministry scope that you see a role for parishioners?
Yes, definitely. I think, I think letter writing, whether it's to people who are incarcerated for a number of years or who are on death row, is a wonderful thing to do. Even in states where you don't have the death penalty, there are so many states that still do. So encouraging that communication. I think for parishes, it's always wonderful when people on death row and their families and their victims families are included in prayers of the faithful. And I think if your pastor is willing to do that, I think that's such a simple but meaningful way to make sure that we're including everyone in the petitions. So I think that's a good idea. Talking about the death penalty during Respect Life Month and really, kind of unpacking, well, we say we're pro-life, and what does that mean? Are we including people on death row when we talk about being pro-life? Let's see. I think, book clubs, reading books like Just Mercy or Dead Man Walking by Sister Helen Prejean are great ideas as well. Watching a movie together about the death penalty, whether it's a documentary or a film like Just Mercy or Dead Man Walking or The Green Mile, I think are also good ways to kind of start the conversation around the death penalty. I think there are some really good personal experiences. There's an organization called Witness to Innocence that is made up of people who've been exonerated from death row. And their thing is they share what it was like to be on death row as someone who was innocent, who did not do the crime for which they were sentenced to death for. And I think hearing their personal testimony really kind of brings light to the issue that when we execute someone, we're executing a human, a flesh and blood person who is a child of God. And kind of on the flip side of Witness to Innocence is the organization called Journey of Hope, which is made up of murder victim family members who oppose the death penalty as well. So I think any time you're able to listen to a personal story of someone who has been directly impacted by the death penalty is really powerful, especially when it comes to changing the hearts and minds of people who maybe are not sure what they think about the death penalty or who support the death penalty. That could be a good way to bring light to the issue.
Terrific. Any other questions? All right, Emma, go ahead.
With that, I might just add that the RJ conference will give quite a few examples of how to be in, particularly with parish ministry, how to be expanding involvement. There are 5 different tracks for intersections with RJ and different themes, different areas. One of them is parish ministry. And so for those interested, that could give some good examples of ways to be further involved in the RJ movement at a parish level.
Definitely. And actually, as you say that, Jeff, let me quickly just chat in the Zoom here, the link to register. If folks want more information about the conference.
I know several of our restorative justice team members are going to be participating.
Oh, good, excellent.
6, Bob says. Great. All right, well, this is wonderful. Do you have any final words for us, or?
I think, I'm just so grateful to you all. I think your parish is really such a good example of, doing the hard work of justice and kind of always learning and expanding the faith perspective. I think is so wonderful. And we're grateful for your support to Catholic Mobilizing Network as well, Julie. So you all are such a good example of how great a parish can be. So thank you.
Well, you're looking at a lot of the ones that lead this effort on the screen. So thank you, Emma. Thank you, Jeff. And we're grateful for your time. We found these communities to be a great resource for our community to learn more about our tithing partners, as well as topics that we are discussing regularly at Holy Trinity. So I think if you came in a little bit later, our next one is on October 15th with Professor Bernie Evans. And he will be talking about voting from a Catholic perspective. So I hope that we will see you then. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Great.
Have a wonderful
Thanks,
week.
Ashley.
Thanks, Emma.
You.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Peace to you all.